Okay, moving right along. We are fortunate to have our Law Director, Saul Solomon, here. Mr. Solomon, if you would please introduce yourself and who you've brought with you and begin your budget presentation, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I have with me today on my left Karen Carver, who is an administrative assistant and is our budget guru. And on my right is the estimable Deputy Director of Law, Mike Safley. In terms of the budget presentation, as you could see from the materials, the budget has in it a reduction of about 1.1% from the prior year's budget. And if you look back over the 2-year period, we're about 3.5% less than we were. We've dropped it about 3.5% over the last 2 years. We certainly will endeavor to live within that budget. We always want more, but we understand what the circumstances are. I've been here for about, one other comment, I've been here for about 3 months and pretty much met every department head, met most of the council members, and certainly all the attorneys. And I just want to say that I'm very proud of what we have in the law department. I think you should too. I think the city gets tremendous bang for the buck out of this department. It's a group of very dedicated professionals. I think just do an excellent job, but I would match them with any law department in the city. So that's at least my initial assessment. With that, I think the budget kind of speaks for itself. It's all about people, and as I said before, we have a very high quality of people, and be happy to entertain any questions from any council member.
Thank you. Councilman Stein, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm just curious, it appears in terms of council obviously tracks sort of settlements as they come before us for us to approve them, and sometimes it seems like there's a lot going on and sometimes they're not. I'm curious whether or not, and this may not be something you can answer today, and maybe Mr. Safley, whatever, over the last few years, is there any trend in terms of the number of litigations that we are settling versus not, and is there what's the sense of sort of ratio of what we settle versus what we litigate?
In general terms, not just litigation, but we've had about a 17% increase over the last 3 years in matters in general. So that's both questions from department heads and litigation matters. So we've had a pretty, and litigation is up probably close to that, not quite. So the cases keep coming in. In terms of whether we settle more, no. In fact, you know, we have a settlement conference when we talk about whether we're going to settle cases or not. Getting the lawyers to recommend that we settle a case is extremely difficult. There is a clear prejudice to not settle unless there is what we call clear liability. And whether it's a police officer, I'm not to pick on the police, but if there's a police officer who, in the pursuit of somebody, does something that they're not trained to do, that would be considered clear liability. And so we have to balance all that and do what we think is the right thing to do.
One follow-up, Mr. Chair. So 17% increase in claims?
In matters.
In matters.
In matters.
In matters.
It might be an inquiry from Mr. Cooper. It might be an inquiry from Mr. Riebling. It might be a lawsuit. It might be an employment claim. It might be a civil service hearing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Tigard, you're recognized.
Thank you. So at the last council meeting, we had approval of a budget item on injured in line of duty and the tremendous increase. 2 questions. If I remember correctly, you or your department is leading inquiry into what we can do to cut those claims and make our employees safer on the job. So I'd like to know the timetable and what your expectations are there. And then secondly, there was, in Mr. Cooper's analysis, there was a statement that only Metro government in one of these injured lines of duty, only Metro had this particular type of injury or claim in it. And cancer presumption for firefighters. And that seems to be very strange to me as to why this county has that presumption and not any other county, and is that something that needs review, and is that part of the reason that we're way out of line on these injured in line of duty claims?
I'll answer your second question first, if I may. There's a state statute that basically gives the benefit of a presumption to firefighters and to police for matters relating to the lung and or the heart. Well, lung in the case of in fire, lung and heart in the case of both of them. There's an optional provision, as Mr. Cooper has pointed out, under state legislation that for any cancer, the city has the opportunity, if it wishes, to pass an ordinance, for example, that would give the benefit or presumption that if the person suffers cancer, doesn't be lung cancer, any kind of cancer, the presumption is that this was done in the line of duty. An ordinance was passed in 1991 by this council, which did approve that presumption. So I would recommend, as one of many things that we're looking at, that we should certainly take a look at that and see if we're doing the right thing in terms of balancing the city's needs with the employees' needs. In terms of the other issue in general about IOD, I think we're attacking it really two ways. The first way to attack it, of course, is let's try to reduce the number of injuries we have. That's the best way to reduce your IOD expense. I think, like as in many organizations, many companies, private and public, we do have an aging workforce. And I think things that people did when they were 25, 30, and 35, they try to do again when they're 45 and 50, and the back gets hurt. Do we have some claims that are completely bogus? Yes, I think every organization goes through that. But really, my gut feeling is that people actually are getting hurt. And so from the front end, what we're trying to do is to reinvigorate the safety program, which is a huge cultural change for us. I think most department heads have been through the kind of the flavor of the month. I bet you Councilman Pridemore was when he was a police officer remembers that all of a sudden we'd get really excited about safety, then a budget cut would come and safety then goes by the wayside. So there's a little bit of cynicism that's creeped into the organization. But on the other hand, there's tremendous enthusiasm about can we really do something to make a difference. So we're going to make a proposal to the mayor pretty soon about what we consider to be a decent pilot program in terms of really try to invigorate safety in some of the departments. Meanwhile, then there's the back end. Once a claim is filed and a person is injured, are we really managing them well? Are we doing well by the people themselves to get them back to work? Do we make it too easy for people to stay out? That sounds kind of harsh. We have to look at really the entire playing field in IOD. But I'm confident that we can do something that would have some very, very positive results over the next 12 to 18 months, and then continuing on in forever. I really am. It's an area that I think the Director of Finance is really focused on, and I believe there's a lot of excitement around trying to get something done.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Maynard, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. Thank you, Chair. We get a lot of questions and calls, I personally do, regarding the process of when the Department of Law determines whether to appeal a decision, whether in a civil litigation specifically. I understand there's a Supreme Court ruling that came down recently. If you could talk about either the flexibility or the lack thereof when determining whether to appeal a case when that client of yours is an elected official.
We generally speaking have the authority to take on a case or not take on a case. Obviously, many things that we do have there's kind of law of unintended consequences. You want to make sure that you're not just pursuing something blindly because we might have a legal right to do something. And so I think in connection with the administration, in connection with department heads, we try to assess, is this something we want to pursue or not pursue? Is it the right thing for the city? Is it the right thing for the people? Is it the right thing for the administration? So we kind of balance all of those things to make the determination whether we're going to appeal or not. I think that's really what we do, generally speaking, at the front end as well. Try to really assess what really makes sense for us to do, taking all of our stakeholders into account. So, does that answer your question?
So the decision is yours whether to appeal a decision when it comes to an elected official.
Can you give me more specific information? I'm so sorry.
You have an elected official. There is a civil lawsuit. The civil lawsuit is in favor of the plaintiff.
Okay. Do we have the? Is it up to?
And I understand there's a recent Supreme Court ruling
I'm not sure about the Supreme Court ruling, but is it against the elected official, the lawsuit, and we're defending the elected official?
And you're appealing a decision?
And we're appealing a decision.
Do you, so what, because I get calls all the time, counsel, why are you all doing this? And I wanted you to explain the process.
Is this similar to the Villegas case? You don't know the case? Again, when it's an elected official who, if it was a case against the sheriff, or it was a case against, God forbid, our trustee, Charlie Cardwell, we would, generally speaking, we represent them. Now, does it ever come to the point where the elected official is saying, you must appeal this, and we're saying, hell no, we're not? Things just, ultimately, who has the authority? I would assume the law department ultimately would have the authority to make that decision, but that's just not the way we operate.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Glover, you're recognized.
Just a quick question. Not being an attorney, the question I have for you, and I think this is a budget question. In the event that we try a case, if we lose it, be it a local, be it a state, or be it a federal case, if we are triumphant and we win it, do we have any recourse as far as recouping our expenses as the local government on the expenditures that we have used to fight that case in any of those venues?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Generally speaking, and traditionally, the answer has been no. There has been some new state legislation that's just been passed, which unfortunately I don't have I don't know what the P's and Q's are. There are certain circumstances now where the losing party is going to be required to pay, and so within that, if it's administrative, it's not in the court system. There might be some opportunities for us to do something like that, but generally speaking, the quote-unquote American rule has been that no, each party bears its own expenses, but there is a shift going on. We'll have to analyze the new state legislation, really see if there's any chance for us to do so.
And is there any way to get an analysis on that to determine what kind of revenues we could bring back to the city to hopefully recoup some of the expenses when we are triumphant?
Certainly, we will endeavor to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good question.
Thank you, Councilman Glover. I don't see any more questions. Mr. Solomon, Mr. Safley, Ms. Carver, appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. Oh, you're not done yet? Well, you can have all the time you want.